So coded. Hey guys, this is Tom from So Coded. We are super sorry. We broke the beginning of Astrid's recording. So what we're doing now is just give her another chance to introduce herself and basically give you the chance to get to know her. So here she again, Astrid Bin.
Hi, my name's Astrid, and today I'm going to be talking about, I did talk about stories. And first, a little background about me. My name's Astrid Bin. My website is astridbin.com if you'd like to see some more of my work, or you can follow me on Twitter at @disastrid. A bit about my background. I'm currently pursuing a PhD. My educational background was my bachelor's was in sculpture, my master's was in public art, and now I'm doing a PhD in electronic engineering and computer science. And I'm an artist first, and always, and also a designer and a researcher. And the kind of research that I do centers around fun and around interfaces and around interactivity. And also things like machine graphic notation, machines listening to music and having visual output and all kinds of exciting things. But my real interest is fun, narratives, and interfaces. And I think that.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Astrid. And now enjoy the real video of her talk. Goodbye.
I'm going to talk about two projects that I was involved in and another project that I had nothing to do with. The two projects that I was involved in also involve this guy. He should really be here giving this talk with me today, but he's in Prague. So unfortunately, he's not here. But this is Pete Hockey. Is my creative partner in some capacity. We do a lot of work together, and also my partner in everything else because we got married. And he's a front-end in JS Dev, and he's also a digital artist. And that is his website and his Twitter, and you can have a look at him there. But I really want to, I kind of come up with the idea of how to manipulate things, and then I do the concept end, and he does the implementation end. Mostly, we trade off a bit, but that's his role in all this, so I don't want anyone to think I'm single-handedly doing all this stuff by myself. But again, I'm here to talk about stories. And stories have always existed, and they're this integral part of human existence, how we communicate information, how we entertain ourselves and one another, how we form communities, and how we even compare and communicate our values and what we think is good and what we think is bad. And that the first thing that was ever written that really kind of brought all analysis of stories together was Aristotle's Poetics, where he talked about theater and sort of analyzed what is it that we do when we tell stories. And one thing that he hit on was catharsis. I'm sure you've all heard of this idea that you go and you see a story and you have an emotional experience and you have like the real emotions of sadness or joy or whatever without actually having to go through the pain and the assery of experiencing that in your real life. So these are the functions that we have with stories. And in the 20th century, there's a guy called Joseph Campbell who's fascinating. He was a comparative literature expert, and he went and examined every story he could, as ancient as they come, from all over the world, and he analyzed all these stories, and he came up with a model of how humans respond to stories, the plot points, and what do all these stories from all these cultures and all these points in time have in common. And if you're at all interested in that kind of stuff, his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, is definitely worth a read. Very insightful. But the one institution that took on Joseph Campbell's findings and also was one of the real cultural powerhouses in the Western world that has influenced us all, whether we like to admit it or not, in very profound ways, was Hollywood. And Hollywood really did take stories to the next level in the 20th century. Hollywood is fascinating. I like to think, Hollywood, like I don't like these mainstream exploding movies. I'm way above that. It's not, none of us are above it. We can't really get away from these, cultural powerhouse institutions, and Hollywood is one of them. And even if you think it doesn't influence you, it does. And it's really, Hollywood's driven the way that narrative's distilled and delivered in Western culture, and it's one of the most influential cultural forces of the 20th century. And it's kind of echoed everywhere in the way that we understand advertising, not only movies, but we understand advertising and books and video games and all of these things. Things have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They're a chronological story that's based in time. They have heroes that overcome things, and there's this kind of like rebirth at the end. There's a love story, and the guy always gets the girl. all of these kind of cultural tropes that we accept are really, I mean, Hollywood has not necessarily established them, but definitely cemented them in culture. And that's why I think Hollywood as a source of stories is very interesting. However, what we expect from a story and what we think counts as a story is starting to change, because Hollywood is not the only major deliverer of stories in like this day and age. It's starting to be democratized a little bit. You don't need millions and millions of dollars to make a movie that a lot of people see. You can do it with the internet and with digital technology. And technology has always impacted Hollywood, from like color film to synchronized sound to digital techniques, digital video, special effects. It's always risen to the challenge. And however, that it's starting to lose its grip as this absolute, top tier sort of source of all culture. It's starting to change. And I'm really interested in how the way that we're telling stories, especially with digital media, is starting to change how stories are used and what we expect from them and how they work. And so there's 3 things I'm going to deal with today. And I mean, there's a million PhD theses that can be written on, narratives in Hollywood and narratives in the digital age. This is like a quick tour. I'm just going to talk about 3 things, and that's where we experience stories, how we experience them, and what purpose they serve, and how these things are starting to shift around. So I'll start off with the where of stories, and where we experience stories. And for a long time, if you experience a story, you experience it sitting down, like a movie theater, or you sit down and read a book, or you sit down in front of the television. So you're sitting and you're looking at a screen or something that's delivering an imaginary world to you. And a lot of time, and mostly that was because, for example, you had to go to a movie theater to watch a story because that's where the projector lived. And so this idea that you were tied to a particular venue to experience a story because that's where the technology was, I think is really interesting. And that carried over to the home theater and television and all of these things, because you can't carry a television around. Do you remember the portable television in the late 80s and early 90s? They were this big and really heavy. And so this idea that you had to go to the technology, the technology could not come along with you, is, I think, a really important thing that is starting to change, because now the technology for delivery is everywhere. And we've all got mobile phones. We've all got portable technology. And these mobile phones are really powerful computers and can deliver these rich media pervasive stories. And technology is around us all the time. And it's portable, and it's powerful, and it's self-directed, and it's open. Not everyone can develop for mobile phones with a certain amount of technical knowledge, and the bar for that is only getting lower. And having a connected device with this media compatibility, and also that connected device has an array of sensors as well, is changing the way that because when you're walking around, you can be in a story world, or you don't necessarily have to be sitting down experiencing an outside imaginary world that can sort of come to you. And one example of this is a project of mine, actually. It's called the Redemption Machines. And the Redemption Machines was an app built in PhoneGap, actually, with JS. And it was an audio experience that used the urban environment as a stage. And so in order to experience the Redemption Machines, you need to be in the place where the story takes place. It's only been done once. I'm really enthusiastic to bring it to other cities and rewrite this story. But it was a story about, that took place in Belfast in Northern Ireland. Has anyone ever been to Belfast? No? Maybe? No. Just me. The thing that I found really interesting about Belfast is that I'm sure everyone is familiar with the civil war that's been going on in Northern Ireland on and off for about 40 years. And this has become everything that Northern Ireland is about. And Northern Ireland's industrial history is almost completely erased. It's almost entirely invisible. Whereas in the 1800s, Belfast was the most important city in Britain, and it was the centre of British engineering and technology. The shipbuilding industry, the linen spinning industry, all of these things were incredibly influential, and there was so much money there, it was insane. And these buildings that were, these houses of these massive banks and massive, centers of industry are either completely destroyed by mostly civic development and or just forgotten about or torn down for progress. So that's one thing I found really interesting about Belfast, it has this hidden history. So that was kind of something I was trying to activate. So I will now we'll have a look at a video that I made about it. The Redemption Machines is a pervasive media experience that stands at the intersection of fiction, audio art, theatre, and game, and allows the participant to interact with their urban surroundings in a new and meaningful way. It premiered in Belfast, Northern Ireland in May 2013. Using Belfast's existing social and architectural history woven into a fictional narrative, the Redemption Machines breathes life into the urban terrain by activating Belfast's past glory days of industrialisation, when mechanisation changed the city's fortunes forever. The story also investigates the human-machine relationship, reflecting on what the costs and benefits are of mass production and mechanisation on a grand scale. Here's how it works. The starting point for the experience was a gallery. Participants arrived at the gallery and it was set up to look like a waiting room, and I was performing the role of attendant. They were issued with headphones and a smartphone running a custom-designed app. They sat down and tapped the screen when they were ready, which triggered the audio story. This, where you're standing, is the membrane place, a place between the human and machine worlds. It's a world where the walls are closing in, a world whose integrity is failing. We need your help. There have been events that bring machines and humans together too closely. The events going on at the moment it happens are trapped here, doomed to an eternity of repetition. The ghosts must be released, and the repetition must end. The participant departs from the gallery and moves around the city to a variety of stop points, checking in with the app each time to receive the story's next chapter. The first stop near the gallery is Belfast's oldest public building, now a disused eyesore. It has not always been this way, and it was originally used as a meeting place for those made wealthy by the products of industrialization. If you can stare past your own reflection, you can see an empty room. There are ghosts here, and they're having a party. The ghosts sip deeply from their bottomless glasses of good drink, and the scent of fresh-cut flowers lingers in the air. The sunlight comes through the window. These ghosts were once human beings, raised to the upper classes by the machines they commandeered. Steam power somewhere else does the work for them, and the humans that stoke those great fires live a very different existence. But now, just look at them, twirling and eating, having the same conversation. The dance begins again. Not far away is Bridge Street, an unremarkable thoroughfare that sustained a direct bombing hit during World War II, during which Belfast suffered the highest numbers of civilian casualties in the UK outside of London. Starting at 10 p.m, wave after wave of landmines and incendiary explosives rained down on the city, and the planes kept coming. Bridge Street, where you are standing, was obliterated by a direct hit. This was a high-density working-class area, reduced to dust and rubble. Humanity had learned to fully wield machines as weapons of war, as instruments of mass destruction. Not far away is the Merchant Hotel, which was built as a grand bank, a temple to capitalism that doomed its manager. In 1867, Robert Grimshaw, the manager of Ulster Bank, was coming out of the bank's front doors. He was an elderly man, already in his mid-80s, and that day he lost his balance on the steps and tumbled all the way down to the bottom and died. A huddle of ghosts is standing at the bottom of the steps now, looking at a spot where the crumpled Grimshaw laid. Some trying to help, some standing around idle not knowing what to do, some women looking shocked and faint, someone screaming. As participants experience the story of the Redemption Machines, the scenes from this industrial history come alive in the imagination and are contrasted with the present-day architecture and urban environment. If this is theatre, the audio is the script and the buildings are the players. If this is a computer game, the city is the setting and the participant is a player protagonist. The Redemption Machines aims to reshape the landscape in participants' minds by allowing them to contrast what they see with what they imagine. So that was the Redemption Machines. And the Maybe I can make this work again. Almost. Hey! So what the retention machines attempted to do was bring together the viewer and the world, the imaginary world they're experiencing. Because traditionally we have to sit and watch something or sit and experience it. And because we now have portable technology, we can kind of change this. And pervasive media is becoming more and more of a medium that's being used for storytelling. And it's one thing that I think is really interesting and something that was simply not possible before portable technology was so available. And the other thing, a section that I'm interested in, is the how of stories and how we experience stories. And one thing that Hollywood definitely trained us to do in the 20th century was passively consume. So you sit in a theater seat and you just kind of experience. And you experience a story, you experience it emotionally, and it was designed to have you experience it and then think about it later. And it was to deliver an emotional experience, to deliver that catharsis that Aristotle was talking about. And of course, there's an economic model behind this, is that they wanted to sell theater tickets. So Hollywood had to design this experience that everyone would want to have, not once, but like over and over and over again. I mean, everyone here's seen a movie. I don't even consider myself a person that goes to that many movies, and I've seen like hundreds my entire life. So this model really did work, and it still does. But I'm really interested in how stories can now respond to the viewer. Because now that we have we've got the possibility of dynamic interaction with the viewer and with narratives, where the narrative doesn't just like go along like a train and you have to follow it, but that it could actually go at your speed and respond to you. I find these sorts of stories really interesting as well. And I did an experiment. There was an audio game called Dark Tower, and Pete and I did this for a Microsoft game jam in Berlin at the Games Academy this past summer. We won with this. I couldn't believe it. And what Dark Tower was it was an audio game. It's got very little interface. It's mostly about audio. And what you have to do is escape this tower is the point of the game. That you wake up in a tower, and you don't know why you're there, and you don't know what happened, but you've got to get down. You know you're trapped somewhere, and you've got to get down to the bottom, and you've got to escape. So that's what it is. And we can have a little look at Dark Tower now. Again, I've got to... Hooray! Okay. So what the Dark Tower was designed that it would be an immersive audio experience that would respond to events, essentially. So we'll have a little look at it and then I'll talk about it.
You wake up in a room. It's dark. Your head hurts. The taste of blood is in your mouth. Your lips are cracked. Something is poking into your back. You are crumpled on a metal bed frame that is pushing its springs into your body. You become aware of something on your face, something wet. It's water leaking from somewhere above you. You can hear a storm outside, rain falling on the roof. The sky feels close from where you are. As you feel your vision fight for focus, you are alarmed. You can see nothing. You wave your hand in front of your face. Nothing. A moment of panic. Have you gone blind? You turn your head to the side and detect a shift between shades of black on the wall. You realize you're not blind. You're just in complete darkness. You experience a moment of clarity and your confusion gives way to a feeling that seems primal, old. It's fear. Why are you here? How did you get here? You shiver as you realize you're wearing pajamas that have been dripped on for some time. Adrenaline floods your limbs. Panic grips your heart. You are overcome with a desire to get out of here. But how? The fear bubbles up inside you and you want to yell out, shout into the darkness. Maybe someone will hear you and help.
So you have three choices. You can scream, help, hello, or is anybody there? Let's try help. Oh, no response.
You want to move. You want to get out of here. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, and your bare feet slap against a cold and wet stone floor. You decide a course of action is necessary.
So you have two choices. That you stand up or get on the floor. We'll get on the floor for sake of simplicity.
You carefully drop to your knees and run your hands across the cold, wet stone floor, exploring the space and searching for anything useful. Your hands run into a soggy rug on the floor, and you run your hands over it. There's a lump under the rug, and exploring underneath reveals a trapdoor handle. Pushing the sodden rug aside, you feel the outline of the square trapdoor, grasp the handle, and pull it open. You carefully feel your way onto a ladder that descends into the blackness below. The wooden ladder feels much warmer than the stone floor as you lower yourself into the room below. Your foot lands on a floor covered by what feels like a thin, threadbare piece of cloth. The air is stale.
Maybe we'll stop there. But that was Dark Tower. And what I found really exciting about Dark Tower was I'd never made an audio game like this before. Because usually when you make an audio project, you make, in a DAW, a digital audio workstation, you have like multiple tracks and you mix them all down to one big track and then that's what you play. But that's not how we did Dark Tower. What we wanted to do is make something that was a dynamic audio environment, and each scene has like 7 or 8 different audio elements. And instead of being set up as just one mixed down track, they're actually set up as a whole bunch of little tracks. And they're all manipulated with a library called Buzz.js. And in each event, each button click, the tracks are dynamically mixed, so they are amplified and attenuated according to settings. So the atmosphere never ends. You can sit there and like mull over your decision for hours, but it's only when you click on an event that the event changes. And you might notice when I went down to a second room, the audio changed because you're no longer at the top where you're being directly rained on, but you're kind of inside. So we were able to build these audio environments with a whole stack of audio tracks, little tiny tracks that came into focus and went out of focus as the viewer moved through it. And each room has its own horrors. One's full of flies, and so there's all this audio stuff. One's got rats in it, and so that was like what we did, and that was really, I think, an important experience for me to realize that a story can be not. It is interactive, but it's still itself. It just is moved along by the viewer. And that was, so the idea of passive consumption is not necessarily the only way that we can experience stories. And the why of stories I also find very interesting. It's not only about like going and having a cathartic event at the movie theater, going with a room full of strangers in the dark and going home. Now we're using stories for all sorts of things and to lend meaning, because what stories do is they lend meaning and context to events. And if you extend this, we can lend meaning and events to all sorts of series of events. Like a series of chronological events can mean a lot of things. A set of directions can be a story, a process, a procedure, a method. So if you apply story elements to these things, and these events can now, these series of events can now have meaning. And this has been applied in a lot of really interesting ways. One of my favorites is this thing called Penguin Navi. And what Penguin Navi was an aquarium in Tokyo had a problem because the train station near the aquarium, I believe, closed down, and the nearest train station was a kilometer away. And it was really hard to find the aquarium, so they couldn't tell people how to get to the aquarium because nobody could follow all these directions, turn left here, turn right here. All the street signs are in Japanese. They rely on tourists. So they thought, well, what are we going to do? So the solution, I thought, was really, really ingenious. And it resulted in this app called Penguin Navi, which only existed to get people to the aquarium. So here's a little video on how it worked.
This is Tokyo. How could you ever find a 35-year-old aquarium here? There are so many thousands of things to do. Even worse, the aquarium is almost a kilometer from the station. But that was our job. We had to attract the visitors to the aquarium and make sure they could find it. Idea! Let penguins bring people to the aquarium. So we created GPS penguins. By using AR, GPS penguins will show you the way to the aquarium. So cute! People can't help but to follow them. What an amazing sense of road direction. We human beings are magically drawn to cute animals. Human instincts meet new technology. It was a world first. Motion capture technology applied to penguins. Our GPS penguins walk exactly like real penguins. Genuine penguin movement.
手をこう左右に振って重心取りながら歩くんですけども、科学的にデジタルでうまくこれで証明されたことになりますね。
Result: mobile phones change boring point-to-point travel into entertainment. Just follow the penguins. You won't notice other distractions. You'll arrive at the aquarium before you know it. Look, people continue coming today with this app.
ナビゲーションアプリペンギンナビ
GPS penguins were a hot topic in many media. Penguins brought not only people, but also smiles.
Is that not the most delightful thing you've ever seen? I was totally blown away by that when I heard about it. And I think because I realized that this is what I'm always going on about with interfaces, is that every set of instructions can be a story, and you can apply these story elements and this idea of these bits that are connected, these tasks really that are connected, having meaning and having context by creating little stories around them. And that's what I found fantastic about Penguin Navi. And I don't know about you, but I would follow those penguins anywhere. And the AR authoring system that this uses is called Metaio. Metaio's based in Munich, actually, and it works on a custom browser called Unio, which is part of their system. And you write all the logic in JS, and JavaScript forms like the glue between the SDK and the HTML. And you use JavaScript to style the GPS elements, like bubbles and arrows, and it also provides the event listening, so you can listen for taps or swipes or whatever. So fantastic. I just thought that was great, and it really. I think it's an important thing to realize that people always want to be entertained, and we really are moving into this state where users always want to be entertained, and so if they want to be entertained, they respond to stories essentially. Then how do you deliver those stories, and how do you give these sets of instructions, these chronological systems, meaning, and how do you make them important? And so. Basically, what we expect from a story and what counts as a story is changing due to these sort of digital implementations of stories. And I mean, there's a million examples of these. I'm just showing some stuff that I've done and some stuff that other people have done, and in every language you can imagine. So not only JS, these were 3 JavaScript projects actually, but they happens with everything. But I'm really interested in the trend of changing stories. And I think there's an important so what element to this. Like, why should I care? Why should I, be interested in stories and how technology is impacting them? And my thing is because it's exciting. For the first time in a long time, where stories are starting to change. That system is not, it's not one sort of industry that's disseminating stories and influencing culture. It can be done by anyone and happen everywhere with tools that are pretty much accessible to most people with a certain level of technological knowledge, certainly accessible to everybody in this room. And the stories of places are happening, is shifting, and now there's an entire world to treat as a stage. That's one thing that excites me about pervasive media and these mobile phone sort of stories, this audio stuff, is that you can have this personal experience in headphones while walking around in public. You can use the urban environment or any outside environment or any building as a stage and as a place where a story happens. And also the changing audience expectations and the stories lending context, because people care about stories. And that's really all I have to say. So if you have any questions, catch me later. If you want to talk about anything, I'm here. I'm Astrid. That's me. That's Pete. And thanks very much.